What if I told you that the car that had to give Hamilton his 8th title is, in fact, his worst enemy? What happens when the best pilot of the century fails to understand the most iconic machine in Formula One? Everything changed the day the signing of Lewis Hamilton was confirmed by Ferrari. It was a movement that shook the foundations of Formula One and that aroused sleeping emotions both in the fans of the Scuderia and those of Hamilton himself. This was not a simple team transfer. It was the union of two living myths of motoring. The most successful pilot of all time and the most historical team of the grill signed an alliance that promised to bring the lost glory back to Maranello. From Maranello to Silverstone, the atmosphere was filled with headlines, speculations, and an avalanche of expectations. Social networks exploded. The media announced the rebirth of Ferrari and the conquest of the 8th title for Hamilton as if it were already a fact. Even inside the paddock, there were those who thought this combination was simply unbeatable. And it was not an illusion without foundations. Ferrari came from closing a very solid 2024 season, where they finished runner-up in builders, very close to snatching the title to McLaren. Last year's car, the SF-25, had shown flashes of brilliance, especially in technical circuits. Organizational changes in the technical structure, with Frédéric Vasseur in command, were perceived as the turning point towards a new era. And now, with Hamilton at the wheel of the new SF-25, the message was clear. Ferrari was serious. But reality soon hit hard. From the first race in Australia, which should be a celebration of this new era, became a call for attention. The car did not respond. The setting did not matter, nor the track conditions, nor the Hamilton experience. Every time he went on track, the SF-25 showed its worst face. Inconsistent, unpredictable, clumsy. The learning curve that Hamilton expected to travel quickly became steep, rocky, and, most alarming, lonely. The hardest thing about this start was emotional disconnection. Hamilton, a pilot who has historically built symbiotic relationships with his winning cars, the W11 of 2020 or even MP4-23 of McLaren in 2008, was found for the first time in a situation where the car did not speak to him, he did not listen to him. Each return was a physical and mental effort to control a car that seemed more like a rival than a tool. And this also showed in the attitude of the team. Tense looks in the garage, radio messages loaded with frustration, and a media pressure that increased race after a race. The broken promise is not simply the fact that the car does not win. It is the brutal clash between hope and reality. It is seeing how a project with historical potential begins to crumble for concept errors, due to lack of technical understanding, due to decisions that, in retrospective, seem hurried. And in the center of that storm is Hamilton, a pilot who has given everything, even his legacy in Mercedes, for a last chance of glory. A promise that today, 10 races later, hangs from an increasingly fragile thread. To understand why the SF-25 has become a nightmare for Hamilton, you have to disarm its technical DNA. This car, conceived as a direct evolution of the SF-24, has not only inherited some of its limitations, but has also deepened the hidden cracks of its predecessor. In theory, Ferrari's intention was clear: to build a more stable, more efficient car in fast curve, with better tire management and a greater operational window. But what they have achieved in practice is an unbalanced car, extremely sensitive to setup changes and with an architecture that punishes the aggressive and fluid driving style of Hamilton. The epicenter of this technical crisis is found in the rear suspension. Ferrari opted for a pull rod system, a choice that initially seemed logical to optimize aerodynamics in the rear of the car, reduce the center of gravity, and improve the flow of air to the diffuser. However, in real implementation, this configuration has demonstrated an alarming lack of rigidity. The direct consequence is an erratic behavior of the rear axle that translates into a loss of tensile and curve outputs and excessive wear of the flat bottom. In fact, already in the China Grand Prix, Hamilton was disqualified by anomalous wear in the lower skating of the car, an unequivocal sign that something structurally is out of control. This defect forces the team to make reactive technical decisions. For example, the filming height has increased to prevent the car from touching the asphalt, which in turn destroys aerodynamic efficiency to compromising the soil effect. This is a decision that no tip team wants to take because it drastically reduces the aerodynamic load, and with it, the passage by curve. It is a vicious circle. A physical problem is relieved, but a penalty of performance is generated that affects each race. And the problem does not end there. The SF-25 is not only unstable at the mechanical level, but also aerodynamic. The car loses balance between the axes in different phases of the curve, subviring upon entering, surviving the environment. For any pilot this is a challenge, but for someone like Hamilton, whose driving style is based on a clean entrance, with progressive weight transfer and a lot of confidence in the rear axle. This pattern is devastating. Hamilton needs a car that is predictable, that gives it clear signs of what it will do on every centimeter of track. The SF-25, on the other hand, is like a machine of chance. You never know what behavior will show in the next curve. The most alarming thing about all this is that engineers do not seem to have a clear solution. Each circuit presents a new challenge. Changes in configuration have no consistent effect. On some weekends, as in Shanghai or Melbourne, simulations simply do not coincide with real track data. It is as if the car had a volatile personality, which responds differently even if the technical conditions are the same. And that is poison for any attempt to progress. The combination between an inefficient suspension, a nervous aerodynamics, and a structure that does not adapt to its star pilot has left Ferrari trapped in a dead end. The most frustrating thing is that the potential is there. The engine is competitive, the wind tunnel data showed good signals, and in the hands of Leclerc, which has learned to live with its whims, the car has had moments of brilliance. But for Hamilton, this car is a technical barrier, a brake on its talent, and an open wound that every race bleeds a little more. What we are witnessing this season is not simply a technical problem. It is a human drama, an internal struggle, an emotional disconnection between the pilot and its tool. Lewis Hamilton is not only dealing with a difficult car, he is facing a professional identity crisis. Because for a pilot of its size, the relationship with the car goes beyond the physical. It is an extension of his body, his mind, his instinct. When that connection fails, the entire system wobbles. Hamilton has built its legacy on the basis of deeply understanding the limits of a car and how to push them. His ability to read the conditions, adapt in real time, manage the race from the cabin, is something that has historically separated it from the rest. In Mercedes, even in the most difficult years like 2022, he managed to find partial solutions to complex problems. But with the SF-25, it has collided with an invisible wall. It is not that this car does not know how to pilot. It is that the car does not give it a language that can interpret. It's like trying to dance with a couple who steps on each compass, who revolves in the opposite direction, who does not listen to music. In the first races, Hamilton tried to apply his usual approach. Aggressive paths, deep braking, fine settings in the differential and brake distribution. But nothing worked. The car did not respond. And then the adaptation phase arrived. Try to imitate the style of Charles Leclerc, more focused on the minimum curve speed, to release the gas before to let the car roll. A complete change in management philosophy. And although at times that strategy allowed him to be close to even overcome it in classification in China, what is clear is that Hamilton is driving outside his comfort zone. Each turn of the steering wheel, every return to the path, is an exercise of containment, not of expression. This forced adaptation process is not just physical, it is psychological. A world champion needs to feel that he is in control, which can trust his tool. When that does not happen, a slow erosion of trust begins. And that erosion not only affects the results on the track, it also impacts the dynamics of the team. The engineering meetings become tense. Strategic decisions become conservative. Radio communications are charged with frustration. Hamilton, accustomed to being the technical compass of his team, today looks like another passenger on a ship without a rudder. And yet, in the midst of all this storm, Hamilton has not lowered his arms. In the Shanghai sprint, we saw a flash of what this alliance can be if it ever manages to synchronize. A perfect turn, absolute confidence in the traced, controlled aggressiveness. It was a moment of communion between pilot and machine. But it was that, a moment. What came later became inconsistency, struggle, frustration. That emotional roller coaster wears even the greatest. The inevitable question is, how much more time this relationship can be sustained? Ferrari needs results, and Hamilton needs a car that represents it. If the team fails to find a structural solution to the SF-25, this season runs the risk of becoming a painful testimony of how a historical project collapsed by a fundamental disconnection between man and the machine. A story that, if not changing the course, could mark the decline of the last big chapter of the 7-time world champion career. And now I ask you that you have reached this point of the analysis. After having explored the context, the technical elements, the emotional and strategic dilemmas that surround the SF-25 and Lewis Hamilton, how do you interpret this situation? Are we facing a simple bad technical streak that can be resolved with patience and development? Or are we seeing the beginning of an irreversible fracture between one of the largest pilots in history and a team that has failed to provide the right tools? But that top seems more and more distant. And if Ferrari fails to reverse this trend, this chapter may end before expected. With frustration, with repentance, with a feeling of wasted potential that would accompany both the pilot and the team for years. So leave me your opinion in the comments. Do you think Hamilton and Ferrari can still save this alliance and turn it into an epic redemption story? Or do you think this combination, no matter how much it would excite about paper, is sentenced to failure since its conception? What would really have to change for this relationship to work? And how long should Hamilton expect before looking for alternatives?